The projector starts, and so begins this episode of Movie Nights and Matinees, the podcast for people who enjoy movies from when we actually had to go to the movies. I'm your host, Bill Groves, and this is episode 24, Mixed Bag Musings, in which Jim Reid and I reflect on the first year of the podcast and chat about other assorted movie memories and topics. So relax, stop writing 2023 on your personal checks, and enjoy our laid-back, free-form conversation. Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening. I hope everyone has had a nice holiday season and is in the process of having a happy new year. Hard to believe that it was a year ago that I launched Movie Nights and Matinees. Over the previous 23 episodes, I've been able to reconnect with a number of old friends and have made some new ones. Among the former, of course, is Jim Reid, who was good enough to sign on as co-host along the way. This first anniversary episode was going to feature an extremely prominent guest, and we've been very excited about his joining us. But alas, 'tis the season to be sniffly, and that actually vastly understates the symptoms currently overpowering said guest, so we'll be rescheduling him for another time. Consequently, today seems like a good time to just kind of reflect on the first year of Movie Nights and Matinees and talk about what's going on in our lives cinematically. So, Jim, welcome back aboard for 2024.
Thanks, Bill.
By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but we now are available on YouTube. I launched that. This last week. I finally figured out the means of doing it, although it's a relatively new opportunity in terms of the technical aspects. So it had been a little intimidating, but I waded through it. And so now we're available that way, all except for one episode, which seems to have run afoul of a music copyright because of some background music in one of the audio clips I used, which I wasn't even conscious of the background music. It's available in the US apparently, but like other territories stuff, there's a restriction on it. I've appealed that. So, who knows? Maybe it'll become available. Otherwise, I guess people who are seeing that one's missing on YouTube, they can always track it down on one of the regular podcast venues and hear that episode.
Is it audio only or?
Oh, well, yeah. On YouTube, it's just, you just see the thumbnail of the episode title and the logo.
Because if you're using video, I was going to have to work on my grooming a little more.
Well, you and me both. So, I figured maybe we just look back and over the last year. And so I know that early on, I had mentioned to you that I was going to be doing this, and I think floated the possibility of you coming on as a guest or maybe even a co-host. But it was a while before that actually came about. When did you first have a chance to listen to it? Do you remember which episode it was?
Was it Frank Thompson? Yeah, I think it was Frank Thompson.
Okay, that was the Beau Jest episode.
Yeah.
I don't have all the numbers committed to memory, so I'm not going to try and nail that down. But and
Frank's a good friend of mine. So,
did you tell me how you met Frank? I don't remember.
Well, I met him at Cinecon. And I've seen him several times at different places. I went a couple of years to Mostly Lost, and he was there the first year. So we spent quite a bit of time visiting there.
Okay. So from that point, were you hooked? You listened to all of them after that, or did you pick and choose?
I haven't totally finished them all yet.
Well, okay. Any first impressions on that one? I mean, by that time, I'd been through some of the learning curve, and
I really enjoyed it. Thought it was very interesting.
Well, actually, I'm thinking, wasn't it the very next episode where I had you as my guest?
I think I was like 2, maybe 3 episodes after.
Okay. Yeah, like I say, I just the chronology without having the list in front of me is eluding me a little bit. Anyway, well, it was nice to have you be on as a guest and then start joining me for these to add a little more depth and occasionally delving into areas that are ones I am not as well versed on. So I really appreciate that. So anything new and exciting that you've been watching? Any films you hadn't seen before that are kind of new revelations or anything?
No, I'm going through right now. I inherited some films from a former member of our film group who passed away just before Christmas. So I've been going through all those lately. He was the king of Laurel and Hardy Fox features. I mean, he had just about all of them. So I've got those and I've been looking through them.
Are they ones you didn't have? Because I was under the impression you had a pretty complete Laurel and Hardy collection.
I have all the Hal Roach stuff, but the Fox stuff that they did later, is most people don't really care for it. Some of them are okay, but it's always kind of bothered me a little bit that the age that they show in it. But I had two of them. I had A Haunting We Will Go and Dancing Masters, so I didn't take those, but I took Big Noise and the Bullfighters and, a couple more.
I remember once years ago at the Tulsa State Fair, on the midway, they have those little crane things that have little prizes that you try to operate the crane. And I think they just have them programmed to, for the most part, do nothing. But as I recall, in one case, they had one of those little 50-foot 8mm or like probably Super 8 reels. And I managed to get that somehow. And it was a little of the Big Noise. And I'd never seen the entire film. I still haven't seen the entire film, largely due to its reputation. That's the association I have with that title. Yes.
Wow! Here they are again. Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. Funnier, zanier, better than ever in that slap-happy riot of mirth and nonsense, The Big Noise. Shades of the G-Men. They're detectives this time, hired to guard a vital military secret. And boy, do they guard it. You're in for the grandest, most hilarious, laugh-exploding good time of the year.
Where's the fire? We weren't speeding, officer.
Oh, no? Don't you believe him, officer? He's been going 100 miles an hour for the past 50 miles. Why, he was going so fast that we were scared out of our wits.
Yeah, we tried to get him to slow down, but he wouldn't do it, would he?
No, sir.
Well, aren't you members of this party?
Oh, no, sir. They picked us up down the road.
Oh, hitchhikers, huh?
Yes, sir.
Then get out and hike.
Yes, sir.
It's not as bad as I know it was in the Golden Turkey Awards book, for being bad, but it's better than its reputation. So.
Okay. That may not be hard. Anything else that you've been watching of interest?
Not really. I mean, I've been kind of hooked on YouTube lately, so going through there trying to find interesting things,
Yeah, there's lots to choose from. In fact, one of the things peripherally to the podcast, I've sort of become an email pen pal of Kevin Brownlow in the last few months. And one of the things I got for Christmas was the 1916 Sherlock Holmes starring William Gillette, which I had really wanted for a while. And there were some things about that I found interesting, and I wrote to Kevin about just to get his thoughts on it. And that sort of started off an exchange where he ended up recommending a movie. It was an early Raoul Walsh film called Regeneration. And I had never seen that, but it's available on YouTube, along with a film that it's paired with on a Flickr Alley Blu-ray, film called Young Romance. And I'd not heard of that one. But in short order, I was able to watch them courtesy of YouTube. But the Sherlock Holmes one I found interesting. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
A couple of things interesting that prompted me to write him to get his thoughts on it. One is that William Gillette's performance seemed so natural. I mean, because so much of the time when you see, especially the earlier silent films, any actors that are in those, if they have experience, is generally on the stage. And on the stage, you have to some extent, exaggerate gestures, facial expressions, things like that, because you've got to be playing to the back row of the theater. And so you see a lot of somewhat exaggerated acting in the early silent films. And you would think that Gillette would be susceptible to that because he was known for playing Sherlock Holmes on the stage. And this was the only movie he ever made.
Oh, he played it a million times.
Yeah. And so you got to assume that he, had that training and that experience, but his performance in the film is just very understated and natural, and I was impressed by that. The actor who played Watson, whose name escapes me at the moment, he was similarly in that vein. And so that was one thing I found interesting about. The other is that I had never really given any thought to when the zoom lens was invented and put into use. But they did a thing in that film in a number of places where there's a wide shot and then they dissolve to a closer shot, same framing, same angle. And then often they would dissolve back out. It's interesting. It's a little bit stiff, though, because the actors in that transition tend to freeze in position until the transition is complete, and then they move. So it's a little bit awkward there. And I thought that was unusual. And that's one of the things I mentioned to Kevin Brownlow. And he told me that the first use of the actual zoom lens wasn't until It with Clara Bow. But then after he recommended Regeneration and I watched that had some dolly in and dolly out shots. So I thought, well, I wonder why they didn't use that technique to achieve essentially the same effect.
It's possible that with Gillette, whoever was directing was able to get him to tone it down, especially if the Watson character was the same way.
Yeah, but it was those two. It didn't seem like the other characters were so much of that. They were a little bit of the more typical broad performance that I would have expected from that time. Anyway, that's one of the things I got for Christmas and have been watching. I
picked up a print of the 1932 Fox Sherlock Holmes with I think Clive Brook.
I was going to say, is it Clive Brook? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not seen that one.
Yeah, it was a one-shot thing, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was very good.
Although he did have a second performance as Sherlock Holmes.
Well, in a cameo.
Yeah, in Paramount on Parade. Yeah, the little vignette that also features William Powell as Philo Vance and
Warner
Oland as Fu Manchu.
Yeah.
My dear Watson, there are 4 men in this room, one of whom does not move. He is obviously not asleep, since if he were asleep, there would be riveters at work next door, which there are not. As he is not asleep, he is obviously murdered. Marvelous. Marvelous. Elementary, my dear Watson, elementary.
Yeah, that's a fun one. And in addition to the Sherlock Holmes, I also got a couple of the Cinerama Blu-rays. There's the recent reissue, further restoration of This Is Cinerama, which I had the pleasure of seeing at the Cinerama Dome with Debbie a number of years ago before we moved from the Southern California area. And it was fun then and there. And it was nice to see this restoration. And I didn't realize until watching the documentary about the restoration just where the improvements were. So there was that one. And then there was the other one called Seven Wonders of the World, which is really mistitled. It should have just been called Wonders of the World, because the approach is, okay, we know that the original Seven Wonders of the World, the only one still standing is the pyramid. Here's where these other ones were. They're not there anymore. And then we're going to go around and look at some amazing things and that we consider to be wonders. And you tell us what you think or should be the wonders of the world. I mean, it was fun, as they all are, but there was that aspect of it.
Yeah, they're kind of just big travelogues, aren't they?
Yeah, essentially so. Although, as I understand it, the Cinerama people hated them being referred to as travel logs. Let's see, what else? Oh, the Crime Doctor series. I've been dipping into that one a little bit. Have you seen any of those? Or
I haven't. I haven't.
Well, they're interesting. Warner Baxter, and I guess these were done at the end of his career. In fact, I think his death is really what brought an end to the series. But that's an interesting set of Columbia borderline noir films. And it's always intrigued me. And I'll go ahead and tease. There is an author who has written a book, a biography of Warner Baxter that just came out recently. And he's lined up to appear on an episode of Movie Nights and Matinees here in a couple of months. I've lost track. I've got guests lined up through mid-May at this point.
I guess I need to be getting on the Crime Doctors.
Yeah. That's one that you should definitely see. It's always intrigued me for some reason, just the premise. Do you know what the premise is on it?
I think I've seen one of them, but it just doesn't stick in my memory.
Well, I saw the first one years ago, and so I had to refresh my memory when I got them. And apparently it was based on a radio series, which I've never heard any of the episodes of that. But it starts out with a guy being thrown out of a car, and he has amnesia, and this is Warner Baxter. And as he recuperates, he just becomes so appreciative of the care he's given. It inspires him to become a doctor after he's fully recuperated. Still doesn't have his memory, but then he starts encountering people who seem to know who he is and recognize him.
I'm visiting a relative up here, brother-in-law. He told me about your trouble. You got that amnesia. Can't remember who you are.
Yes, I suppose everybody in the place is talking about it too, huh?
Too bad. Tell me, what do they do for it? How do they cure you?
Well, it's hard to say. The doctor says it may clear itself up any time. Then again, it may never happen.
Don't you believe it, Phil? I don't.
Phil, do you know who I am?
Sure I know. So would Pearl, Nick, and Joe.
Pearl? Nick? Joe, what?
Lay off, will you? That Axis phony's a $3 bill.
You know who I am. Tell me.
No, you tell me. What'd you do with that valise? Go on, you tell me. Where's the valise? The real one. Did you hide it?
And ultimately, he discovers that he was involved in crime. So his first mission is to bring to justice this crime ring that he was part of, and which tried to kill him. And so that's the plot of the first one, and that's different from the others because then he's established as a criminal psychologist, and so people come to him with cases and things. Lloyd Bridges appears in, I believe it's the second one, Crime Doctor's Strangest Case, and he's an interesting character in that one. Oh, another one that I saw for the first time recently was Walk, Don't Run, Cary Grant's final film.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I knew it was his final film. I didn't really know that much about it beyond that. But as I was watching it, it very quickly, I realized.
It's a remake of The More the Merrier.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I realized that a few minutes into it. And the only reason why I was able to make the association as quickly as I did was because I had only recently seen The More the Merrier for the first time.
How do you do?
How do you do?
I'm Benjamin Dingle.
You certainly are.
I'm about the apartment.
I'm sorry, I've already rented it.
Just a moment, young lady. Do you think you know me well enough to lie to me?
Yes.
Even so, you shouldn't do it. Do you realize that practically most of the trouble in the world comes from people lying to people? Just take Hitler, for instance.
I'm sorry, mister, but I prefer...
Mr. Dingle.
Mr. Dingle, I prefer sharing my apartment with a lady.
That's fine. So would I.
I'm sure you'd be happier someplace else.
I've been there.
So he arrives at the door there and is delivering some dialogue to Samantha Edgar, who's going to become his landlady. And I thought, wait a minute, I've heard that before. And
I came about sharing the apartment. How do you do?
How do you do?
You see, this card was on the bulletin board at the embassy.
But you're a man.
Yes, I suppose so.
I prefer sharing an apartment with a woman.
Oh, so do I.
Yeah, sure enough.
Having a deja vu experience.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I had the same experience with film with June Allison, and it's a remake of It Happened One Night.
Yeah, I mean, I recall there being a remake of It Happened One Night, and at one time I knew the title of it, but I don't know what.
You can't run away from it. You know where I first saw that was back when we were living in Tulsa. The Tulsa cable had its Channel 5 that was like nonstop movies.
Right.
And they started out by buying this huge Columbia package. So they ran like every Columbia movie you've ever heard of. And that's where I saw that one. That's where I first saw the Capra films. And they had some pretty rare stuff on that, too.
Well, one that for some reason stands out in my mind that I saw was Autumn Leaves. But apart from that, the one that really stands out in my mind, because it's become one of my absolute favorite movies, is Champagne for Caesar.
Yeah.
Which I understand you saw for the first time recently.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Mr. Bottomley, I would like to thank you. Through you, we have A, increased our rating, B, gotten quite a bit of publicity. And C, we have doubled our sales.
D, I couldn't hear better news. E, I hope the sales increase even more. And F, it would frighten you if you knew why I felt this way.
Now that's public domain.
Not that I know of. As far as I know, Wade Williams, now his estate, has a pretty solid grip on that one, which is why it's not more readily available. I mean, you can go on eBay and find the DVD that was released of it, but I don't think you're going to find it streaming anywhere or certainly part of any.
Bill Blair, who owned United Films, and then it turned into VCI later.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He transferred all those prints to 3/4 inch for them to run at the cable company. So I'm guessing that he probably threw in some more titles, and he was friends with Wade Williams. So.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a personal friendship there.
Yeah.
And correct me on this, because I have this thought in my mind, and I've believed it for a number of years. I don't know that anyone's ever really confirmed it for me, but the Bill Blair of VCI United Entertainment, he was Big Bill on TV, right?
Well, no, I don't think so.
Really?
No, I think.
And for people who are not from Tulsa in that era, there was a kids show called Big Bill and Umagog. It was one of those afternoon cartoon shows, and Umagog was a robot. Big Bill was the guy who hung around with him.
I think Big Bill was named Bill Blair. It's just
a different Bill Blair?
Right.
Okay. Well, then.
Unless I'm totally mistaken, which has happened before.
Well, I think I went to kindergarten and first grade with the daughter of one of them anyway.
Yeah.
But in any case, that's going back a ways. And speaking of VCI, I was just reading a portion of Leonard Maltin's, I think it was his book, Movie Crazy. May run together here, but he had a segment on movies that were kind of saved from obscurity or destruction. And one of the things he mentioned was the Mandrake the Magician serial and what was done with that, especially to fill in some gaps in the audio of the surviving print or the available print, the only one, I guess, that was available to VCI to release. And as it happened, I recently picked up that DVD and have been watching it. And there's one sort of interesting thing. Now, this would be interesting for people who live in the Los Angeles area, is about halfway through, you get a look at the exterior of Mandrake's home, referred to as a mansion. And when you see the front gate, it's evident that this is it's now called the Brand Library in the hills above Glendale. It was the home of a gentleman named Brand, who was one of the founders of Glendale. And it was done in a kind of a Middle Eastern architectural style. And he gave it a name, Miradero. And that name is over the gate that you go into the front. And I recognize that. I recognize the design. And now that's part of the Glendale library system. And they specifically have fine arts related things there. I went there once and checked out, I think it was a Kingston Trio album or something, but they also have kind of a hiking trail up there because it's part of, I guess it's Brand Park now, the property. So it was really cool to see that and go, hey, I know that place. Now, earlier we alluded to the Dallas Classic Film Group, which you host in your home and have the monthly screenings, which I have been fortunate enough to begin attending. How did that come about?
Well, for years, I only knew one other film collector, and he years ago had moved out to LA.
Was that Bob Brower?
Yes. I got on a film collectors forum called 16mmfilmtalk.com. And it was really great. I mean, it's probably over 100 collectors on there. If you ever had a question about anything, you could throw it on there and they would help you out. There was a for sale section. Really anything that you would need as far as information was on there. And I got an instant message on there from a guy who still lives actually in Plano, which is 6 or 7 miles from me. And he said that when he had lived up in Illinois, they had formed a film group and they used to get together the way theirs was they would get together once a month and everybody would bring a reel of something because they just wanted to see each other's prints, so they wouldn't watch a complete film. So he asked me, would I be interested in helping start one here? And I said, sure. And so there were a bunch of, probably 4 or 5 people that I knew, and there were 4 or 5 people he knew. And so we just, set a time and we all went to his house this one night. He ran Terminator for us, which was really cool. This was in around January or February of 2000. So it was about almost 25 years ago. So we just started the thing where, because we were all film collectors, we started a thing where every month we would have it at a different person's house. And then usually if that person couldn't have it at their house, they would have it at mine, since I was the only unmarried guy in the group. So the group went along fine for a while. And then, a few people moved away and dropped out and all that. Then we got a message from somebody who had heard about us that just wanted to come and watch the movies. And we're like, okay, and they came and they were real nice people. So they joined the group, and then more of those happened and more of those happened. And now there's only really 3 film collectors left in the group. And the rest are all just people who want to watch movies. So I like to put on a show like you would see in a movie theater back in the 30s, 40s.
Right.
So, I run trailers and then little snipes, which are the things that say, here's your previews of coming attractions and
visit the concession stand.
Right. Yeah, let's all go to the lobby, that sort of thing.
Right.
So I run a lot of that stuff, and then cartoons. I'll usually run 3 or 4 cartoons and a comedy short. Laurel Hardy is my favorite, and then a feature. And I try to set it up for 3 hours. So if I've got a short feature, you'll see more short subjects, and everybody seems to enjoy it. So
yeah,
we got a very large group now, but really only a portion of those come to the movie nights.
Yeah, there was a good turnout for the Christmas show.
Yeah, but if they all ever showed up, I'd be in trouble because I don't think I can get 87 people in my living room.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a large number, and there are snacks.
There are. When it first started out, I provided the snacks too, and all the drinks and everything, and it was kind of getting to be a little expensive, And
sure.
One day, one of the people was just like, well, why are you buying all the snacks? And so okay. And now everybody just brings stuff. So,
and I guess the next one, which will, by the time this episode rolls out, I think it will have already taken place, but remind me the title on that one, because it's a film that I'm not familiar with. It's kind of a noir repeat performance or something.
Yeah. Repeat performance.
That is the title. Okay. All right. That one sounds interesting. I was not familiar with that film. So,
yeah. Now, see, that's a case where we don't actually have a 16 millimeter print of that, but I've also got a video projector here, so that'll be run on Blu-ray. But all the short subjects that run before it'll be run on 16 millimeter.
Okay, and I believe you told me that another member is actually programming that evening.
Right.
So does that happen often?
Probably once or twice a year. He's one of the original members too, and so whenever he wants to, hey, I want to do one of the nights, I say, okay, you got January.
Oh, I could so program an evening of that. Well, I mean, I've told you, and I've mentioned here before that when Debbie and I lived in Houston, we did a monthly Saturday afternoon matinee program at a nursing home. And I would actually create programs that we would hand out too, that would have like poster art on the cover and description of the movie and the shorts that we were running. And again, you have a trailer, a cartoon, and a short subject of some sort. Now, it could be anything from a comedy, two-reeler, Laurel and Hardy, Robert Benchley, Our Gang, Three Stooges, or it might be a serial chapter, which, we never got any complaints about people, that they didn't get to find out what happened the next week or anything like that, but they seem to enjoy it. And then we'd have an intermission after the shorts and do a drawing with prizes that would be donated. It was kind of sponsored by our church at the time. And so people would come along to help, and Debbie would pop the popcorn, and people would bring cookies and serve sodas or juice or snacks, things like that. And then, as I say, we'd have drawings for those prizes at intermission, and then we would show the feature. And the crowd tended to diminish as the feature went on, either in terms of actually leaving in their wheelchairs or nodding off. But occasionally, we'd get a few that would stay through to the end. And sometimes I remember we ran Broadway Melody of 1940, which is one of my two favorite Fred Astaire movies, neither of which co-stars Ginger Rogers, Damsel in Distress being the other. And the end of that, the big finale, Begin the Beguine, there was actually a standing ovation. Not by everybody. Not everybody was capable of giving a standing ovation, but it went over well. So,
I tried running serial chapters, but my biggest problem was that I would forget half the time, or I'd have somebody who missed a couple of movie nights, and then they would come back, and it's like, "With the stories just jumped here." And I said, "Well, yeah, you missed 2 chapters,
It's the nature of the beast.
So, yes, I kind of stayed away from that. I stay away from double features too. There's a problem with double features. It's not the time, because I could easily do 2 short films, but I've found that in my group, once that break happens, people, here's my opportunity to leave.
Right.
And like half the people just head out the door. So from then on, I just stopped running double features.
Well, I know that you're a big Laurel and Hardy buff, and you lean towards comedy with your collecting. What are some interesting or favorite non-comedies that you've run at the film group?
Well, I've got Captain's Courageous and
Spencer Tracy.
Yeah, got a lot of Hitchcocks. In fact, I just got a print of Notorious about 6 months ago. So that'll be coming up. I've got Foreign Correspondent, Rebecca, Shadow of a Doubt. Then I've got a lot of non-Laurel and Hardy comedies too. I got several Wheeler and Woolsey films.
Oh yeah. Do you have a favorite of those? Yeah, please tell me it's not going to be The Rainmakers, because I saw that and I did not care much for that one. Well, for the longest time, my favorite was Hips Hips Hooray. But then I saw Picho Reno, and I think that may have replaced Hips Hips Hooray as my favorite. I mean, a lot of people say Diplomaniacs, and then I guess there's also the Nitwits.
I've got Diplomaniacs and the Army comedy they did, which was, I think...
Half Shot at Sunrise.
Yeah.
It's interesting. That one, I think, used to show up on a lot of public domain.
It is public domain. Yeah.
But I just acquired a new public domain, one of those 50 movie sets, and it wasn't on that one.
I like, it was right before Hips Hips Hooray.
Cockeyed Cavaliers.
That's it. Cockeyed Cavaliers. Yeah. So my favorite is Cockeyed Cavaliers.
It's a good thing we get out of that last town. They were going to put us in jail again.
Yeah. On account of you, we've been in every pillory on the continent. Get that silly look off of your face. Every time you do that, I know you're ready to lift something. And you promised me you weren't going to steal another thing.
I can't help lifting things. It's a disease. The doctor says that I'm a kleptomaniac.
Yeah, well, why don't you take something for it?
I've taken everything. But I don't really steal.
No, you don't steal. You just find a lot of things that haven't been lost, that's all.
Yeah, that one's very stylized, as I recall.
But it's also got, I don't think it may or may not have Dorothy Lee. I'm not sure. But it does have Thelma Todd, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And Jimmy Finlayson is in it too. So I actually ran that. I programmed a movie night one month, and it was, I called it, It's All Comedians You've Never Heard of. And the feature was Cockeyed Cavaliers. And then I ran a...
Clark and McCullough?
Clark and McCullough two-reeler. Yeah. And I think I had a one-reeler, an old early Paramount one-reeler. But it was fun. And everybody really enjoyed that. So
Yeah, you want to go really obscure, show Schilling and Lane.
Yeah. I also saw a film, and I saw it in 35 millimeter at Cinecon, which was great. I think it's called Rootin' Tootin' Tenderfoots, and it's a Columbia short from 1952. and it's Max Baer and Maxie Rosenblum are the stars. And what it is if you watch it, and if you're familiar with the other film, it is a two-reel remake of Laurel and Hardy's Way Out West.
Really?
I mean, it's got like almost exact same plot line, and
Did they do the dance and everything?
No, not everything exactly, just the plot itself, you know.
No tickling
Because
scene?
I was sitting watching it and I was going, yeah, I had that deja vu experience of I've seen this before, you know.
Wow. Well, getting back to Wheeler and Woolsey, the one title of theirs that was sort of the missing link was that short, Cleopatra. Now that finally turned up on YouTube. Right. Did you have a chance to watch that?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't real impressed with it.
Yeah. I was kind of disappointed.
But in terms of two reelers, I just picked up a DVD at a thrift store, and it says volume 1. So I'm curious as to whether there actually are more volumes. You know, it's one of these cheap, maybe Alpha Video, Mill Creek, I forget which one, collections, but it's a set of two reelers that Edgar Kennedy made. Starting with Pathé, and then I guess it became RKO. So watching some of those. Again, not terribly impressed, but
the Edgar Kennedys were a lot like later sitcoms on TV, and it was kind of the same thing every time. So I'm not a big fan of Edgar Kennedy. I mean, not in that series. Although if you watch some of the early ones, like it's either the first one or the second one. It's called Next Door Neighbors, and
that's in there. I don't think I've watched that one yet.
Yeah, he and I know Franklin Pangborn's in it. I can't remember whether he's the next door neighbor or another character in it, but that's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one.
Okay, well, I'll definitely have to make it a point to watch that one. I remember there was one on a train that ended up just being completely chaotic and was not especially funny.
By the way, you talked earlier about Fred Astaire.
Yeah.
Have you seen the two Columbias he did with Rita Hayworth?
Oh, I've seen all of them. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, You Were Never Lovelier. That's one of them. And what's the other one? Drawing a blank. But, well, while you're pondering that, one interesting thing is that Fred Astaire is so amazing. And even though, as I said, Broadway Melody of 1940 is one of my two favorites of his, along with Damsel in Distress. But there's another film, Let's Dance, Betty Hutton. Now, I am not a big Betty Hutton fan. I tend to find her performances just a little too cartoonish. However,
a little of it goes a long way.
However, as I recall, that one overall was more balanced in terms of the drama, the comedy. But I will say this, she, above any other dancing partner of his, has been the only one who has ever been able to pull my eyes away from Fred. She was that good in those dancing scenes. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't, but I know that the Blu-ray just came out on it, and I was getting ready to order it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I definitely would encourage you to follow through on that.
It's You'll Never Get Rich, by the way. Is the other.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's another one.
Second Chorus he did with Paulette Goddard.
Right. I've got that. The one where he's a former flying, I'm just drawing a blank on it now. I think 5 minutes ago I would have had it in my mind where this is the one where he does the number.
It's not Story of Vernon and Irene Castle.
No, that's Ginger Rogers. No, the one where he does the song starts out, Set 'Em Up Joe. I'm trying to remember the actual name of the song now. But anyway, a very famous song that I think Frank Sinatra had more success with, but there's a very good sequence in there. But it's the one where he's an aviator, and at the beginning, it's just one of these things that stands out, makes me laugh. He's a World War II aviator, but the footage that they have at the beginning of him shooting down an enemy plane, he's shooting down a biplane. So that always stuck with me. Now, have you seen Damsel in Distress?
I've got a print of it, but I haven't gotten around to watching it yet.
That's another great one in terms of his dancing partners, although in this case being Burns and Allen.
Right, because he had a non-dancing leading lady.
Yeah, right. But it's a lot of fun, and it's really kind of amazing to see George Burns dancing with such skill. Well, and Gracie too. And there's one number that they do in there. It takes place. It's an elaborate number. It takes place in a fun house, and Gracie does this. I don't know what the right word is, but it's a sequence where, if you've read Fred Astaire's autobiography, Steps in Time, there is a dance routine that he used to do with his sister in vaudeville, and it involves her, or maybe both of them at different times. It's been a while since I've read it. Essentially taking the pose as if they're riding a bicycle and they're moving around the stage. You see Gracie do that in that dance number in the Funhouse in Damsel in Distress. But I just think that one's a really fun one. And I think it's based on I don't remember if it's based on a book or if it simply was written, a screenplay by P.G. Wodehouse, the creator of Jeeves.
Wow.
But that's my recollection.
Yeah. Well, Burns and Allen were in vaudeville for years, so I'm sure they did a lot of dancing there because, your act for the most part would be comedy bits and then a little song and dance and.
Well, yeah. And in fact, there is a sequence in it involving whisk brooms that they taught Fred how to do. It was one that they used to do in their stage act. And so they were teaching him on that one, but it's another really fun number. And there's a lot of good humor in it too.
The Sky's the Limit.
That's the one with the, where he shoots down the biplane and then later does that scene in the bar.
Yeah. It's another one I haven't seen. You're schooling me on Fred Astaire here.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll school you on Eddie Cantor as well.
Yeah.
You still got to
I've seen Whoopi. I think I've seen one or two others, but I don't remember what they are.
Yeah, you still need to see Palmy Days.
Yeah.
I mean, Busby Berkeley, and then as a villain, you got Charles Middleton.
You'll do as you're told or I'll kill you. Go ahead and kill me. See if I care. What's my life worth anyhow? Yesterday I tried to kill myself. I walked in front of a taxi cab and dared the taxi to run over me. But a taxi wouldn't do it. Do you know why? It was yellow.
George Raft as a sidekick. You got Charlotte Greenwood as Eddie's love non-interest on his part. Anyway, it's just a lot of fun. And it's my favorite of them. So definitely see that one.
Yeah. I think the only one I've got a print of is A Kid from Spain.
Yeah. Robert Young. It's been a while since I've seen that one. I mentioned earlier that we're now on YouTube, and it's interesting to see what's being accessed on there. Most of the episodes so far don't have any views. And I say views, it's really listens because there's really nothing to look at. But it's considered views because it's YouTube.
Right.
And most of them don't show any views yet. There's a few that have one view. I think the one I did with Ed Hulse on Cliffhangers, I think maybe that's one that has like 19 views. Okay. So that's pretty cool. And I get that. The one that's blowing me away with 91 views last time I looked is the episode about Hal Roach.
Sons of the Desert. They're out there.
Yeah. I'm guessing I must have tapped into the Laurel and Hardy people. Sons of the Desert.
Yeah. By the way, our movie group here is also a tent of the Sons of the Desert.
Oh, you are? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So does that mean I'm a member of it, or
that's
or
what it means?
So there's no initiation I have to go through, secret handshake I have to learn, or anything?
Yeah, we'll put you through that later.
Oh, okay. The hazing and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. What does that consist of? Moving a piano up a huge staircase, or
I can't tell you. It's a secret.
Oh, well, of course that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. The Laurel and Hardys really, that was what I started collecting when I first started, and that's always been kind of my pride and joy. I finally got all of the Hal Roach Laurel and Hardy shorts. And the last one was one of their early silents that was the only one that wasn't distributed by Blackhawk Films. And I looked for it for years and years. And then a guy I met on the internet was looking for, oddly enough, Edgar Kennedy films because he was trying to complete his collection. And I had a friend who had a whole bunch of Edgar Kennedy prints. And I knew this was a guy I could trust. And so I asked my friend, I said, do you mind if I send these to this guy? And he said, yeah, no problem. So I sent them to him, and he ran them over to some lab. It was in New York City, made copies of all of them. And I think I had the prints back in less than a week. But after that, it was like, tell me what you're looking for. So I gave him a list of stuff, and he found me the almost complete reel one of Battle of the Century.
Oh, wow.
Which worked out later when I ended up getting the complete reel too. So I now have an almost complete print. But he kept asking, and I kept telling him this one title. And he's like, well, I'm still looking for it. I'm still looking for it. And he ended up moving to Germany. And I got an email from him one day, and he said, I found a print. He said, and the guy didn't want money for it, but he wants a print of Buster Keaton's The Goat. And I said, well, that's kind of odd you should say that, because that's the only Keaton film that I have 2 prints of. So I sent one of those prints off to him, and a couple of weeks later, I finally got my print and completed my collection.
Yeah. Now, you told this story before, I think, when we first talked, when you were a guest, but I don't remember what the title was that you got from him. Which one was it?
It's either Why Girls Love Sailors.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Okay. For some reason, I get confused about that one and another one that also has sailors in the title.
Oh, okay. And it's funny, you mentioned Black Hawk. That just puts me in mind of something I ran across on YouTube just a couple of nights ago. I didn't know this existed, but there's apparently Black Hawk put out a Gertie the Dinosaur that is not the actual Windsor McKay Gertie the Dinosaur. It was a copy, an imitation that another animator did that, quite frankly, looks a little better. I mean, in terms of just the detail in the shading and so in the animation art. But I didn't know that existed until I just happened to run across it on YouTube. So you never know what you're going to find there.
And you know, the Gertie the Dinosaur was actually, it was a live and film act when it was first done.
Yeah.
And about it might have been 15 years ago at the Kansas Silent Film Festival, David Shepard did that act with the film. It was really cool.
I think I may have seen, I have this memory of having seen someone do it somewhere with the live interaction. And I don't know if I saw a video of someone doing that, or it might have been at the Silent Movie Theater in Los Angeles. My memory just is not that solid.
It could have been David, I guess.
Well, I guess that'd be a possibility, but I will be eternally grateful to him for his having created the DVD of Le Roi des Champs-Élysées, the French film a French produced film that Buster Keaton did, and he created a version that had the English subtitles.
Yeah, he was at Kansas for the Silent Film Festival about 3 years. The first 3 years I went there, I mean, it was like a little kid meeting Santa Claus, you know.
Wow.
And I just was like right at his elbow the whole time, you know, asking him questions, and he answered every one of them. He was very friendly and great guy, really great guy.
Well, on that note, it's been fun just kind of rehashing the year with the podcast and just getting into some other fun stuff that's going on with us. I look forward to the coming months with the guests that we have lined up. And I hope everyone out there will join us. Welcome to you YouTubers who are discovering us. I encourage you to also visit the Movie Nights and Matinees website, leave comments, although you can do that with YouTube as well. And then there's also a Facebook page. So I encourage you to check that out. At times, there will be supplemental images that are shared by our various guests. And of course, you can always, get a conversation going there, leave suggestions, start arguments, whatever. But do be sure, if you listen to this on a conventional podcast source, such as Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating, and a review would be great. We haven't gotten that much feedback, and that's the kind of thing that I think will propel this forward and expand our range. Also, share it with your friends, other movie buffs that you think would be interested in this, because we cover a lot of topics of classic films. So if one episode doesn't interest you that much, although I like to think that our lively conversations will make them worth listening to anyway, but even, as I say, if the topic itself isn't attractive to you, there may be another episode that you're going to be keen on. So be sure and hit the download or subscribe button, whichever is applicable. There's no charge for the podcast. It's not that kind of a subscription or anything. We just want to get it out there, spread it around, and have a good time. So, Jim, thanks for joining me on this walk down memory lane and kind of catching up on some recent stuff. And I will be seeing you in the next episode in a couple of weeks.
Okay. That was fun. Thanks.
All right.